All right, we are live. I'm going to let people slowly trickle in here on their lunch breaks today as we get ready to talk to Elizabeth Chambly Burch, Beth, as you go by, and we'll let her introduce herself in just a second to talk about her hot off the presses 3 days ago book, The Pain Brokers, which is a wonderful read. As I keep telling people, if you are a Grisham fan, and as I was telling Beth before this, if you're a Grisham fan, this is like real life Grisham, which is like maybe also unfortunate because it's real life, as in this is not a made up story of fraud and terrible things happening to women and whatever, but is actually happening even now, as we're going to talk about. There is actually more of it starting to happen. So we'll get into all of that. But Beth, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the people who are listening now and will be listening later?
Great. Well, thanks so much for having me. This is fantastic. So, I'm a law professor at the University of Georgia, and I write about mass torts. I've been writing about the boring side of mass torts for 20 years and wanted to do something because I felt like people weren't being listened to on the plaintiff side, and that the plaintiffs who were involved in these really big cases didn't feel like they were being heard by the justice system. And so I went back to school. I got an MFA in narrative nonfiction, and my second month in the program, or maybe my first month in the program, I got a call from a whistleblower. And it was this fantastical call that was too crazy to believe, except that it actually turned out to be true. And that was the start of the Pain Brokers.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so literally someone called you and was like, did they say, I want you to write a book about this? Or they were just telling you,
They
like,
were just telling me this crazy thing that happened. And, it's one of those things where I think had I not been in an MFA program, I would have just sort of dismissed it and thought, I don't have time for this. I'm too busy doing scholarship or whatever it might be. But the more I listened, and then you of course have to fact check in a million different ways, but it turned out to be true. And that was the craziest part about it, was that this is actually true.
cool. So the pain brokers. Most people know what a tort is, but for anyone who's like, what is that? It's a mass lawsuit where it's a lawsuit that is done on behalf of a class of people, as it's called in the legalese world. And Beth, you're the actual lawyer, so stop and pause at any point that I'm mischaracterizing anything. But in mass torts, a suit that is it's plaintiffs in a class are experiencing the exact same thing. So the same product has hurt them, or the same person has hurt them, the same company has hurt them, whatever it is, and you're going to seek damages, usually tons of monetary damages, of course, tons and tons of money. And it would be like actual damages and punitive damages and like all this kind of stuff. And in the world of that, the lawyers and whatnot, of course, usually take, like, I would say a third, usually is customary, of fees. And then the rest goes to the class of plaintiffs. Now, when you're getting like a couple $1 billion or something, that can usually still be a lot. Probably the most famous example of a tort for anyone who's listening and is like, I don't think I understand. If you watched Aaron Brockovich, that's tort.
Yeah.
Probably the most famous movie version of a mass tort, and the lawsuit against PG&E in California all those decades ago. So that would be an example of like a company practice harming a community of people that, were able to sue in mass. Your book is focusing on pelvic mesh, which was a medical product that was used for a while, approved by the FDA, seemed to be great and all this sort of thing. And then it started to come out that there were issues. And you were not contending that there weren't issues with the product,
Right.
correct? Like there
Right.
were some legitimate
Absolutely.
concerns. Um, but what was starting to happen, and then I want you to go into deeper summary after I set this up, is that basically women's claims were more valuable if the mesh was removed versus if it remained, even if they were experiencing. So they could be experiencing legitimate pain, incontinence, whatnot from the mesh remaining, but if it was still there, the claim was usually less monetarily valuable than if it was removed. And basically, what you describe in this book is this really horrific, worst scam call of your life kind of thing that tricks women into having these crazy surgeries to have their mesh removed and also pay for it, instead of having their insurance pay for it. It's absolutely wild, just so that they could then enter this class of plaintiffs that would be more valuable to these supposed lawyers. And I'm going to say supposed lawyers because I think it's an insult to the legal profession to even call these people lawyers. It's like, what do you even call them? So, what do you deep dive a little bit more into what's going on behind the curtain of this pelvic mesh fiasco?
Yeah, yeah. So one little point of clarification. So a class action is a little bit different because it's oftentimes over like small claims. So you're
Oh,
overcharged,
mhm.
say $3 in an ATM. Class actions can be kind of the dark side of the world too. But mass torts is like the Wild West. So class actions, there are at least rules. There are some due process checklists that you have to follow. Mass torts have all of the same sort of problems that you have in a class action, but none of the safeguards. So you have people who have been massively injured. This isn't just an overcharge for a $3 ATM fee. These are people who have pelvic mesh. It's typically a product that's used to deal with incontinence of some sort or pelvic organ prolapse as people have children. And these women were getting these calls out of the blue, and it didn't raise an antenna because the callers actually had the women's medical information. So there was a data breach that happened in India. And the cold callers knew the women's birthday, they knew their implant date, they knew the name of the hospital, they knew the name of the doctor. So they had all that information that you would normally say, oh, I'm not giving you that. And so it sounded very legitimate. And they told them they have a ticking time bomb in them and that if they don't have the mesh removed within 2 weeks, that they're going to die. So it's just these crazy calls that they're getting, and it terrified them. I'm
Right.
happy to talk more about that, but yeah.
Yeah, well, it's the ultimate, emotional blackmail for sure. So they're basically given, like, either you'll die in 2 weeks, which is insane, or we can do and what was the next step of the con, basically?
So they tell him, you need to have the mesh removed. We're flying you down to South Florida within 2 weeks, and we'll set you up with a doctor. We'll set you up with everything. And so they sent them this DocuSign packet. And if you've ever signed a DocuSign packet, you might know that you can auto populate it with the initials so that it goes to all the different pages as if you have read all of them. But in this case, it skipped directly to the signature page. So when the women signed what they thought was, the HIPAA forms and the healthcare forms and all that kind of consent, instead, they were actually hiring a lawyer through a retainer agreement, and they were taking out a lien against their future settlement proceeds. So instead of a procedure that would have cost them $800 to $1,000 through insurance, they were having to pay between $60,000 and $120,000 as a lien against their future medical proceeds. They were flown to South Florida. They were put up at a hotel. Their mesh was taken out at these chiropractic clinics, these outpatient centers that are next to strip malls. They were put up at a hotel that night and then flown home the next day. So it's this crazy operation.
Absolutely insane, and as your book goes on to describe, a lot of the time these women end up worse than they were before. Yes, there were legitimate concerns with
Right.
pelvic mesh, and yes, some doctors would recommend their patients to have it removed, but others, in balancing the equities, if you will, like
Yeah.
we're like, no, the benefits outweigh the current risks, and if you weren't actually having some of it was side effects of the product, which happens, and then some of it was legitimately like, yeah, we have to get it out. And the way you describe this, like, you guys need to get the book if you want to have like this true crime slash John Grisham experience, because it truly was like just a horrific. I was physically feeling the, like, oh my god, like, just any woman who has, existed on this earth would have a hard time getting through this part of the book, but it's like well worth it to understand just like the pain that these people were put through purely as a money factory. Like,
Yeah.
that's what it all came down to, is like, we have to get these women to agree to have their mesh removed so that their claims are worth, like, 10 times more than they would have been otherwise. Which is just, this I wish I could say that the story of using women's pain for money is
Was new.
but it is not. This is not, in fact, a novel. This is, in fact, a real story. So anyway, for those of you just joining, we are talking about The Pain Brokers by Beth Burch here. And we're going to go through kind of the origin story of this book. So you told us why, you wrote this because first of all, I mad props for going to get an actual writing degree because you wanted to write. Like I I love that like super commitment of like, well, if I'm going to be a writer, I need the credential to go do
Yeah.
it. Just love that. But also like I want to know when you get this call, were you immediate? You obviously did fact checking and whatnot, but did you have this moment of like, I have to write this book? Like, was it like I'm gonna write it? I just need to find all the facts first, or did it take you a while? Was there conflict? Were you like, I really am not sure? Like, I want to know behind your brain a little bit.
Well, I mean, I think one of the most difficult parts was figuring out. I mean, I knew this was a story that I wanted to write, but I couldn't figure out who the main characters needed to be. So there are so many people who are involved in this scam, and trying to figure out how to tell a really complicated story in a way that is uncomplicated, that you can kind of follow it. And that, so, we settled on this as a braided narrative. And so you meet the women, you meet the bad guys, you meet a number of people who are beginning to try to unravel this. But it was, this moment of, do I dig into this? Is this the right thing? And I had recently talked to J.R. Baxter, who is the lawyer in the story, and had gotten a little bit of flavor for this. And so when Ron called, I didn't immediately put the two and two together. So when the whistleblower called, I didn't realize that we were talking about the same scam. And then when I did, it was like this, sort of serendipitous moment that was like, okay, this is meant to be. Like,
Right.
this guy just randomly calls me after I've been talking to this young lawyer in Arkansas about the same sort of thing. And at first I thought there was a connection that JR had sent in my way, but he had not. It was all independent.
Oh, so it was like two
It was
separate.
just two sort of things happening, and
Yeah.
then yeah,
The
yeah.
universe was telling you to write the
It
book.
was
That
absolutely
that it was making it it's like, "If you're not clear yet, I'm gonna make
right,
it super clear." I mean, I do love at the beginning that you had a flow chart. If anyone knows anything about me, I love my whiteboard and my flow charts. I'm like, "All right, let's get everything." Because 'cause you're right, it's a super complicated story.
yeah,
Even as I'm reading it, I'm like, "Okay, who is this again? Who's Vince Chambra? What did they do? Okay, that's right. They're the," because
right,
that's part of a good con, really, is having it so convoluted
yeah,
and, God bless you're basically one of your heroes, the lawyer who ends up chasing
yeah.
down kind of the lead here. She's incredible. I kinda want you to talk
Barbara Dennis,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep,
yes.
I definitely want you to talk about, Venice some more. She is like what I wanna be when I grow up, of that kind of, like, grabs the lead and is like, "Nah, man, I'm gonna find you
This
now,"
is some
like
crazy stuff.
right, exactly, what it's like once and it kind of it's funny, it's almost like it sounds like you as well in writing this book of, like, once you had the thing, it's like, "Oh, Imma drill this down."
Right,
Like,
I'm
we're
not letting this go.
yeah, we're gonna get you. And I love that energy from anyone. So that's wonderful. So we'll talk about her more in a second. But also I love the fact that you had a cast of characters at the very beginning of the book. And I read
Yeah,
through them. And when you haven't read it, you read through the cast of characters, you're like, okay, I'm not sure I understand anything that's
right.
going on yet, but it's very helpful though as you're reading to go back and reference like, yes, okay, that's who that is. Okay, keep going. Um so I really, first of all, thank you for being so like meticulous in how you laid this out because it makes what is like kind of a crazy narrative much easier to digest.
Mhm.
So talk about Barbara Venice a little bit because she sounds awesome. I want to be her friend.
So Barbara she is a partner in a big defense firm called Reed Smith, and she had been hired by American Medical Systems that had then been purchased by Endo Pharmaceuticals. American Medical Systems made the mesh, Endo bought them, and Barbara Bennis was a big mass tort plaintiff's defense lawyer. She had been involved in the FinFin fiasco with Wyeth. She had, defended a number of people in the pharmaceutical industry. And so she gets a hold of this, and her client decides early on that they want to settle instead of taking a whole bunch of these cases to trial. But in the settling of these cases, she's starting to smell something bad, and she gets this call all these calls from women, through well, a couple things happened. She had a surgeon that she used as one of their expert witnesses, and the surgeon called her and was like, "So I got a really weird phone call. This guy's wanting me to take out these meshes and, they're gonna pay me directly, and we're not going through insurance," and there were all these sort of, like, red flags. And at the same time, there were women who were calling their doctors and saying, "I got this cold call. I've never told anybody. I have not told another living soul that I had mesh, including my husband. You must have sold my data somehow." And the doctors are like, "No, we did not. We didn't do this." And so Barbara starts to, drill it down and to investigate and figure out what the heck is going on.
Right. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, she's, amazing. Again, y'all read the book. I'm not going to give you all of the juicy details because that's the point, is that you should purchase this lovely gem and get into the thing. Is there an audiobook?
There is an audiobook, yeah, and you don't even have to listen to me read it. So, it's read by this amazing woman who is an Audi Award winner, and I was super happy that she agreed to do it. She's done Gillian Flynn's book and John Grisham's books, so I figured
There
she
we
would be
go.
perfect for it.
Absolutely perfect. All right, well, there you go. So, y'all, if you're not into I love reading paper. When Beth first reached out to me, she was like, "Here's a PDF," and I was like, "If it's not too much trouble, I'll have the physical copy." I really love physical books.
I
I
like
do.
to yeah.
I am 1,000 years old, and I just
Well, as you can tell, I have a million books, so I prefer paper.
I don't own an e-reader. I will do audiobooks. I will do
I like audio, yeah.
Yeah, but even then, it's like sometimes I'm like, I just wanna hold the book and read it, like, yeah, anyway, again, I'm from the before times people. Um, I wanna talk about a possible sequel to your book already. I know you just wrote it, and it just came out. But we had a crazy headline. So before we went live, everyone, I was talking to Beth, and I said, now it's funny when you read new things and you learn new things, because then other things start to catch your attention. And I always get the Reuters legal briefing of the day or whatever, and it has all these headlines. And I skim headlines like anybody. I can't read every single freaking news article that's ever been published, or I'll go insane. But then I saw one flash by, and it was in the bottom. It's not a big one, about Epic Systems suing over what seems to be very pain brokery type activities. So let's talk about that complaint for a second, because Epic Systems is an EMS, an electronic medical system, for anyone who, like, most of the time, if you went to the doctor and they're putting stuff into the computer or whatever, a lot of the time that's Epic. And so they're suing because they believe that their data has been unlawfully attained by nefarious dealers.
Number of entities,
Right.
yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Several. So do you want to talk more about that complaint? I know I kind of threw it at you, and it's like,
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, it was just filed this week, and it's, a complaint is allegations, it's not facts, but the allegations are against a whole bunch of different companies. I was just looking at this list here: Health Gorilla, Ravella Med. I mean, all these, they sound kind of sketchy. Um, and they are suing for fraud. They're suing for aiding and abetting fraud. They're suing for breach of contract. They're suing for all of these, breach of these trade practices acts. And essentially what they're alleging is that they are using this data for improper purposes, one of which is for mass tort plaintiffs' attorneys.
exactly.
Um, so we have I was telling Kate earlier, you wonder, is this the beginnings of the Pain Brokers 2.0?
Yeah. I mean, my jaw dropped when I saw that headline. I was like, because when did you start writing this book? I never
I
actually.
started in, let's see, September of 2021.
Oh my God. Okay. Yes. So
Yeah.
that was, almost 5 years ago.
Yeah,
And obviously your book outlines activities that have been happening for years before that.
right.
So, and this is 2026. And so now we've got this new legal complaint, with several companies. And Epic is it the number one EMS in the country?
It's huge. If it's not number 1, it must be close.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I can't even name another one. I usually, every time I go to a doctor, I'm one of the weirdos who's actually reading the screen to, like, figure out what it is.
Wait, who
Yeah,
am I giving this information
I
to?
know. Yeah, people. People, I'm just a strange person. Don't mind me. But yeah, I, you know, like anyway, it's just horrifying because I'm like, okay, so when I get this call, this is why everyone, by the way, like, don't answer your phone if you don't recognize the number. Screen the call. There's so many call screening things now and whatever, make them leave a voicemail, make them do whatever. I refuse to answer my phone. And I tell people all the time, and especially now that I've gotten into like this kind of journalistic situation, I'm like, you need to identify yourself when you're calling me or when you're
Yeah.
texting me or whatever. I will just ignore you otherwise for exactly this reason. Um, so it's really like a, a big thing. So any one thing that I love about your book, and this is, I think, where we'll close out, but what I love about your book is that you do a really good job of centering the women. It would be very easy, and we talked about Barbara Bennis obviously being kind of, a hero of sorts because she's the lawyer who really drills down. She uses her power and her resources to be like, yeah, even though we're settling, we're actually going to deal with this,
Right. Right.
which I really appreciate. But at the end of the day, the ones who are caught ground into the gears of this machine are these women. And I appreciate so much that you centered their stories, you give them names, and they, are the centerpiece. Are you able, willing, obviously, privacy is a thing, and I'm not telling you to put anybody on blast, but to give updates about where these women are as far as like post the pain broker, like
Yeah.
how is the
Yeah.
justice system moving and all that kind of thing?
I mean, I don't want to give away the ending, but not much has changed. So I'll
Mm,
just sort of say it in that
wow.
way. I think Sharon Gore is doing pretty well. She's had a number of procedures to try to fix the fix.
Right.
And then Barbara Shepherd is doing well as well. She has a number of grandkids at this point and is back in her house up in Claremont, New Hampshire, and she's still working 2 jobs. She's still fixing things around her house. She's still just as handy as ever. And Jerry Plummer well, I won't give away the end for
Yeah,
Jerry
yeah.
Plummer.
There we
Yeah,
go. We're gonna,
yeah,
like, leave
yeah.
that there. I, you know, I I truly appreciate that this book was clearly took a long time. You like you said, you started it in 2021, as you were getting a degree to make sure that you could be an amazing writer, which you are. And it is coming out in January 2026. And also you can't put a narrative like this together without having, I can't even imagine the research you've got behind it.
Well,
Like
yeah,
hundreds of pages,
yeah,
thousands of pages, I am sure, of stuff behind every single page. So thank you for just like digging into it and then making it into something digestible. I think
yeah,
one thing that I'm learning about, like, obviously I focus more on like civic engagement and politics and whatnot and economics. But and also like and of course the legal system is all interwoven into all of those things.
right.
And all of that stuff can seem, I think, like voodoo to a lot of people.
Mhm.
So, like,
Yeah,
something happened in a back, especially when you're
right,
talking about like torts and settlements and whatever.
yeah,
Something happened in a back room somewhere. People spoke
right,
to each other, and that was like what happened. And I really appreciate people like you who will take it and turn it into like a story and a flow chart and a process. And like, it's like this is actually something that you can comprehend, and ultimately you can protect yourself from. Like,
right.
if you have a woman in your life, you need to like read this book for them or give them this book or whatnot and be like, this is how we need to learn how to protect ourselves from predatory systems. Because as we said, Epic is now alleging that there was a huge
It's happening.
breach and it's still happening. So you're getting those calls that are like, are you experiencing pain in your arm or whatever? And like, do you want to go? Right. And they're just magically gonna pay for a surgeon for some reason, like it's just except
Well,
you're
and I mean, you've got all the GLP-1 lawsuits now.
yeah,
So over Ozempic and Wegovy, there's 3,000 lawsuits that have been filed already and
right,
250 more a month. And so,
yeah,
that's going to be the next big one, I
right.
suspect.
It would not shock me at all if, as they like unpeel this Epic suit, if it's like, oh yeah, look, it's all these Wegovy patients.
Yep.
What do you know? Like, oh yes, a
Shocker.
coincidence, I'm sure. Anyway, Beth, any final thoughts before we close out today?
Oh, I'm just so excited to get these stories out there. These women are so excited. I heard from Jerry Plummer and Barb and Sharon this week, and they're just thrilled that this is out in the world. So I hope people will read it.
Yes, please do. It really is some girl power too. These women connected with each other and started like they formed their little tribe and that was part of how
Yeah.
they were able to like also bring justice was comparing notes and I just
Digging. Yep.
yeah, right, digging. It really it I talk all the time on my various like channels and whatnot about like, you know, making that one call, doing that one ask,
Mhm.
inquiring minds want to know. I said that earlier this week. Like pushing on the system. It does work. It feels like you're pushing against a brick wall by yourself most of the time. Brick wall. But and so it's incredibly frustrating, right, on
Yeah.
an individual basis, and what is so beautiful is when you get to step back and when a story has unfolded, as this one has over, obviously, the course of, like, a decade, is that you start to see where it's like, "But we were all actually pushing,
Yeah.
and and eventually it came
These
down."
collective efforts. Right.
Right,
Right.
exactly, and this is definitely a story of, like, collective effort. There were a lot of people
Yeah.
who had to do the right thing, even nefarious people who, you're kind of like, you know, um, antagonistic towards like,
Yeah.
"Okay, cool, I'm glad you, like, said something even though you kinda suck." Like,
Right.
like, there's that too. It takes all kinds. But still that same that ethic of if you see something, say something. It's really that simple.
Yeah.
If you realize that that's not right, raise your voice somehow,
Yeah.
and it will start something that will start something else that will start something else, and then someone maybe with more power, more resources, like Barbara Bennett, for instance, grabs it and is able to take it much further than you would have been able to. That's how change happens. Nothing. My saying, nothing changes if nothing changes. Like
That's right.
you
The
must.
butterfly effect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you got beautiful people like Beth here who write amazing books, go to an entire school to learn to write books, and then write something awesome like The Painbroker. So this is out right now. It came out on the 13th, so it is literally out this week. And you can buy it at bookshop.org because we're not going to invoke the name of that man's company that I won't say. And also you can get the audiobook, I'm sure, on all the audiobook
Yeah.
platforms in which people do
Yeah.
that, or the e-reader or whatnot. And Beth, I really appreciate your time today. Thank
Oh, this
you.
has been great. Thank you,
Yeah,
Kate.
of course. Thank you so much for being like a gem in the legal system, like
Likewise.
yeah, part of all of that.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Oh, you've already got a purchase. Thanks, Mark. Thank you for purchasing the book.
Thank you so
And
much. I hope you enjoy it.
all right, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I think this is a great way to have a Friday. So,
Happy Friday.
yep, happy Friday, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.